In this video, I'm going to show you how I add fog to a photograph using Luminar 4. Fog can add a really beautiful depth to a photograph, but you need to choose an image with the understanding that you will need to do some masking, and you also want it to look realistic. I chose this image because the existing scene and weather are suitable for a foggy environment. Images with a lot of foreground detail might make it difficult or just take a very long time to mask. And as we all know, on a foggy day, things that are closer to the camera are going to be more clear, and as the distance gets greater, the fog and the layers of fog increases. So I'm going to jump right into editing this photo to add some beautiful fog. I'm in the Edit view and I have the Layers panel active. I'm going to begin by adding a new adjustment layer. So I'll click on that plus icon and select Add New Adjustment Layer. When I know I'm going to be doing some significant masking to an edit, I find it a lot easier to work with adjustment layers. It gives me more control, and it also helps me organize my edit and my workspace. So I have the adjustment layer active. I'm going to go ahead and rename this, and I'll just click the little three dots there on the right, select Rename Layer, and I'll simply name this Fog. And now I'm going to add the fog. So I'll go down to that creative category. Fog is at the very bottom. I'm going to make sure that light fog is active, and I'll increase that amount. I'm just watching my photo as I'm doing this. I'm going to add a good amount of fog there. So I have it set up to in the mid 60s. And that's all I really need to do inside of the adjustments here. So I'm going to go back to my Layers panel. And now I'm going to add my mask. I'm going to start by adding a gradient mask. That will kind of help create that perception of depth with the fog. So I'm going to go down to Edit Mask and select Gradient Mask. And now I'm just going to click and drag. And you can see I started dragging up, which is the wrong direction. I want that fog to be in the back. So while I'm still dragging, I'm just going to swap it and start dragging down. And I'm just going to give it a nice little feather there. And now I'm going to relocate that so it's a little bit more centered in the image. I'm done with the gradient mask, so I'll click Done at the top. But I still want to do some masking. What I'd like to do is I want to make sure that this large rock here on the right is a little bit more clear, and I need to mask away some of the effect. So I'm going to go back over to that layer, click Edit Mask, and select Brush. Now by default, the Paint option is selected on the top in those options. I want to make sure that I set this to Erase, so I'll click Erase. And I also want to set my opacity pretty low. I had it set to 25 already. It's probably going to be at 100% by default, so just click and drag that slider down until you get it to a lower setting, and I'll just bring it back to 25%. And I'll keep the other options the same. And now I'm just going to brush away that fog effect on the rock. When you have a lower brush opacity setting, you need to make several brush strokes over the same area in order to get a better effect. But it helps prevent the harsh lines that you can sometimes get with masking. Now, as you can see, just above that rock, I did kind of go over the edge a little bit. And I need to fix that because I don't want that to be visible. So I need to switch over to the paint mode. And to do that, simply press the X key on your keyboard. When you see that plus icon, that means that you have that paint mode active. I'm also going to decrease my brush size, and you can quickly decrease and increase the brush size by using the left and right bracket key on your keyboard. So I'm going to decrease it with that left bracket key, and I'm going to paint over. I'm going to decrease it a little bit more. Just trying to kind of cover up that little halo effect, and because I still have a lower opacity, I want to make sure that I'm making a few brush strokes to kind of bring it back. Let's go ahead and take a look at what our mask looks like. So up at the very top, I'm going to press that little eyeball, and that toggles that mask view. So I mostly have a gradient mask with a little bit of masking done to that rock. Another thing you can do up here in the settings is you can play with the density and also the feather. The density of the mask is kind of like a mask opacity setting. At 100%, the entire mask is visible, but if you were to drag that slider to the left, it starts to show some of those areas through. And if you look over in that layers panel, what used to be a black mask is now a gray mask. I want this to be at 100% density, so I'll go ahead and slide that back to the default. But I am going to increase that feather slider. I'm actually going to toggle that mask preview on while I'm doing this so you can see what is happening. So I'm going to click on that mask drop down again, and I'm going to increase the feather. And if I go all the way to the right, it goes all the way to almost 1,000. And that, of course, spreads that feather way out. I don't want it to be that intense. I'm probably going to set it somewhere about 40 or so, maybe a little bit higher. I'm going to remove that mask toggle, and now I'm going to play around with it a little bit so I can see a little bit better what it's doing to the image, just helping kind of soften the edge and just help it blend better with the photo. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I think my mask looks pretty good, and I'll click Done. Another benefit to using an adjustment layer is that you have this adjustments amount slider. So if you're looking at your photo and you think that the adjustments, and of course I only added one tool to this adjustment layer, but you could add more than one, of course. If you're finding that maybe it's a little too intense, you can simply slide it to the left. And I do think that actually helped. I still see some fog, but it helps soften the effect a little bit. So let me go ahead and toggle that layer on and off so we can see what that fog addition did to the photo. Now lastly, if you wanted to add even more stylization to your photo, the best way to do that, if you already have an adjustment layer, is to add another adjustment layer. So I'll click on that plus icon and select Add New Adjustment Layer. Here I'll go into the Essentials category. I'm going to go down to AI Enhance, increase that AI accent slider, and this is making some nice edits to the entire image. And I could go on from here if I wanted to, maybe add a mystical tool to add a nice amount of glow. And that is one way to add fog inside of Luminar 4.